Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kaye. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Lays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, good morning and welcome into Gamecock Pod Live for September 11th, a day we will never forget. We will honor the fallen later in the program. It is a somber day for me. It used to be on this day when they'd show the ceremony at Ground Zero, the children of the first responders would read their names. Now, 23 years later, it is the grandchildren of the first responders, many of whom are too young to have even met their grandfathers or grandmothers, the first responders that rushed in to the Twin Towers to try to save as many lives as possible to never reemerge or be seen again. But let's get into Gamecock sports, and what a difference a week makes, that's for sure. Gamecocks, I tried to stay away from the message boards last week. Everybody was wanting everybody fired and had resolved themselves to being 3-9. But then South Carolina goes to Lexington and dominates Kentucky, holds them to less than 185 yards of total offense, wreaked havoc with their defensive front and put it away with timely offense. And then the dagger, the pick six, from Nick Eamon-Warry, who was honored as the Defensive Player of the Week in the Southeastern Conference. We'll get into all of that and more and look ahead as the epicenter of the college football world will descend upon Columbia this week with College Game Day from 9 until 12. And then 10, 15 minutes later, South Carolina and LSU will kick off in what could be a rainy Williams-Brice Stadium. But first, let's jump into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Lancaster area. Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, or now as the weather's starting to cool off, the big backyard bash with a whole hog barbecue. Nana's Porch has got you covered. And now Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese, both flavors, the smoky jalapeno and the great regular flavor, which finished 1 and 2 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association, is available for you to order online. All you do is go to nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Toggle over to the right side of the pull-down menu, and when you see pimento cheese, click on it. And Southern Foods has partnered with Nana's Porch. They will cold pack your pimento cheese order and send it out to you, shipping free. So I strongly urge you to support this Gamecock owned and operated business. Again, Nana's Porch, NANASPORCH.com. You'll love it. You won't regret it, I promise. And so we'll get to news and notes later. Let's go out onto the Nana's Porch guest line and bring in the sleepy Jordan Kaye this morning. Jordan, thanks for being with us right off the top. It is a kind of a somber day, September 11th. I don't know if you're old enough to even have any memories of.
I was 3.
3 years old. Yeah. I guess for my generation, the end of the baby boomers, I was not born until January of 64. And so obviously I would not remember the Kennedy assassination. For most people, that was the event that they always remembered and pointed to. For my generation, I'll never forget. I had just started in pharmaceutical sales and was actually doing a breakfast in an office that morning, and they got the Today Show on, and we're in the back eating hot Krispy Kreme donuts and coffee and talking, and all of a sudden, they report a plane had flown into one of the towers. Nobody knew for certain. Was it an accident? What was it then? I just remember they showed a live shot of the towers, and the one tower was on fire. It was burning. And then you just see a plane fly right into the second one. And at that point, you knew it was a terror attack. We all went home. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with that, but I do want to get into Gamecock football, and I guess we'll start with what a difference a week makes. I said last week, things are never as bad as they seem. Things are never as good as they seem. The truth is somewhere in the middle. I know you were in Lexington on Saturday. I heard you asking Shane Beamer a question in the post-game press conference. Just your thoughts of South Carolina's, again, a dominant defensive performance, but a little bit better on offense. They made some plays, and wow, 31-6. Your thoughts?
That was the best case scenario for South Carolina. I think coming into the game, I wasn't going to be surprised if South Carolina won. Wasn't going to be surprised if Kentucky won or got blown out. I was very surprised that South Carolina just blew out Kentucky. That was, one of the more dominating SEC wins of Shane Beamer's time, probably since the Tennessee win 2 years ago. When you have a defense so dominant that the opposing offense is scared to throw the ball in the second quarter, it just feels like you already won the game. And that was something I wasn't quite expecting. And I know Kentucky's offensive line was banged up and had problems, but there's no reason to think that South Carolina, with Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard and the defensive tackles coming up the middle, no reason to think they can't do this against almost every team they've got left on their schedule. And all of a sudden, the possibility for this season, like all those hopes and dreams are still alive, and they're actually somewhat plausible in a sense now, 10 wins or whatever you want it to be. It's all alive, and you could not, the hope for that was diminishing last week.
I wasn't expecting it. I thought the game was over in the third quarter, after South Carolina averted complete disaster on their first possession when Lenora Sellers put the ball on the ground, 2 straight plays, particularly that second one. The ball was on the turf for what seemed like an eternity. One of Kentucky's guys, I think, tried to scoop it up, and he was going so fast, he tripped or stumbled and fell over the ball.
Yeah.
And then it's just laying there, and Deion Walker looks like he's going to get it, and Kamar Bell dove in and somehow dug that thing out. Carolina punted, held Kentucky, and 3rd and 14, Lenora Sellers scrambles out to the left, hits Mazio Bennett down the sideline, and then the next play they throw that pass where they just flooded the zone, and then Joshua Simon came across the formation, was wide open down the hash. That would made it 17-6. And I thought at that point, if South Carolina doesn't turn it over and don't give up 70-plus yard pass play on a bust, there's no chance Kentucky's winning this game. And Kentucky at that point just kept going backwards and backwards and backwards because of penalties. But I would caution, and then I'm going to turn it back to you. Things are also never as good as they seem or never as bad as they seem, because there are 3 or 4 plays in that game, holding Kentucky to a field goal right before the half on Lenora Sellers' interception. They had a short field after completely dominating the first half. It's completely different if they go in and it's 10-10 at half. Then averting the disasters on the first series, Kentucky getting a short field with the ball again, and then Lenora Sellers stepping up in the pocket and just slowing down and just floating that ball out there. A lot of times the guy will just chunk it and get rid of it and overthrow a wide open guy like that, especially a young player. He just floated it out there, and boom, after that, the next play, I thought the game was over.
Yeah.
Those 3 or 4 plays, if it goes different, that's a completely different football game in Lexington.
Yeah, I kind of thought about that. There's the 2 drives where they settled for field goals on both of them. And you got to give some credit to South Carolina's defense, too.
No doubt.
It's not like Kentucky missed a wide open pass in the end zone or anything. Like, they didn't have an easy shot. But, yeah, if Kentucky drives down the field and gets a touchdown, and then Sellers throws the interception, they get another touchdown, and Kentucky's either, tied or leading going into the half. Completely different halftime speech, completely different game plan. Who knows? The second fumble, like you're saying, in the press box, I thought Kentucky had it. Like, I was ready, like, oh, okay, Kentucky's got the ball, let's go. And then you kind of see South Carolina come up with it, and I was like, what? And the replay was remarkable that Kamar Bell was able to jump on that. But you're right, and it's hard right now because there's so much excitement, and you want to just think, my goodness, like, that was unbelievable. What a dominating performance. And also, it's not like the part that isn't a fluke is like Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard. Like, that is not a fluke, and that might happen every week. And so if you're trying to hold out hope that this is sustainable, you just kind of look at the pass rush and say, that part was not lucky. We that might be we can replicate that at week in and week out. And so that's the hope if you're South Carolina right now.
No doubt. We saw Rocket Sanders finally get going. Jared Brown, I thought, would look like a completely different player. I think Lenora Sellers' first completion was like a 23-yarder over the middle, and that was like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball in a tight window. He came down with it. He had the explosive run on the jet sweep. And then he had a key 3rd down conversion on 3rd and 11, they ran the comeback route. Perfect throw by Sellers, perfect route. He caught it on the sideline beyond the sticks. And, Carolina still had some penalties, though. Your thoughts on the Rocket Sanders apparent touchdown that they didn't call a touchdown? At least on TV, there was no conclusive replay on that. And to me, I thought it should have been, after video review, the call on the field stands. But it's like they just said, well, we can't really tell, but I think it should be on the half-yard line. And so they just put it there. But that's not the rule. I mean, you were watching it.
I couldn't tell. Like, we didn't have any good replays, and I just kind of assumed it was a touchdown, and so I didn't look at the replay. But yeah, when you're going back and rewatching the game, I didn't see one way or another that he was in or not in. So at that point, you got to just stand with what's on the field. So I was a little surprised. Luckily, he did get his touchdown, so that helped. I guess it diminishes his yards per rush. But what are your thoughts on Rocket Sanders through 2 games? Because to me, I just haven't been that impressed with him yet. Aside from that one run that you're saying that ended up at the goal line, it just, to me, he's getting tackled on first contact too often.
Well, I mean, every yard he had against Old Dominion was yards after contact. 100% of his yards in that game. I think it's a failure of the offensive line. I think, he's a veteran player. He's not going to bounce everything outside unless he just sees it, which he did see on that apparent touchdown run. I thought there have been 2 or 3 runs where you can really tell he's special, but I think it's just the failure of the offensive line to give him an opportunity to get to the second level and to get through the line of scrimmage. But I thought he got better as the game wore on, and the more carries he got, especially in the second half, he started to kind of get lathered up and shake the rust off late on Saturday in Lexington.
That's fair.
So another play that a lot of games you're not going to overcome is, I thought they really and I thought Dow Loggins did an excellent job for most of that game, calling plays with motions and formations and scheming guys open in the pass game. But I thought that was a crappy play on 1st and goal, being in the shotgun with a 245-pound quarterback. I want you under center with maybe Brady Hunt and Tonka Hemingway or Boogie Huntley behind him, snapping it and having 2 big guys just push him into the end zone. So you get hit for a 1.5 yard loss. Then it's 2nd and goal from the 2, and you get a holding penalty that moves you back to the 12-yard line. That's another instance where you're not always going to overcome that. Now, on the next play, Jared Brown shook a Kentucky DB out of his shoes, and he had no choice but to hold on for dear life.
Yeah.
And so they got it to the 6, and then Rocket, I thought Torricelli Simpkins on that 6-yard touchdown run, he bulldozed a guy, and then they pulled Joshua Simon as well. And he just, had a hole and then brushed off another guy and waltzed into the end zone. And on the plus side, it did basically run about another 1.5 minutes off the clock in the 3rd quarter. Kentucky had 1 play, and then the first play of the 4th quarter, Nick Emanwari hit him with the dagger on the 6. And, you never know when a stupid pair of sunglasses can come in handy, and Mark Stoops didn't have any on Saturday.
That's true.
So we talked about, Kentucky's offensive line. They were without one starter going in. Another guy got banged up. Clearly, South Carolina overwhelmed them. But this week, something's got to give as we start to look a little bit to LSU. Shane Beamer said yesterday they may have the best offensive line in the country. Their left tackle, Will Campbell, number 66, will probably be the first offensive lineman selected in next spring's NFL draft. He's played 1,700 snaps and only allowed 3 sacks, one to Jared Verse, first-round pick, one to Will Anderson, who was a top 10 pick, and then one on a quarterback scramble. LSU, through 2 games, has not surrendered a sack. South Carolina has 10 sacks through 2 games. Something's got to give in this matchup on Saturday. Also, Garrett Nussmeier completing 75% of his passes for 8 touchdowns, just 1 interception. They've got a deep core of talented wide receivers, a really good tight end. They will be without their top running back, John Emery Jr., who is out for the season. And then defensively, what really gives me a little bit of hope is it's sad to report LSU's top defensive tackle, Jacobian Guillory, he tore his Achilles Saturday night against Nichols. He's out for the season, but Nichols ran the ball for 150 yards on LSU. Yeah. And LSU, thus far, they're not even running for 90 yards a game, which is not LSU football, really.
Yeah, their running game against Nicholls State was pitiful. So it's kind of interesting. It's shame, they can tout, we've got the best offensive line in the country, yet it's like one running back goes down and all of a sudden they can't run the ball at all. So that part's concerning if you're LSU and gives you hope that the South Carolina defensive tackles can make LSU one-dimensional. And if you make LSU one-dimensional, all of a sudden you can start running some blitzes. Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard can just kind of, pin their ears back and, hey, let's get after them. So that's the hope if you're South Carolina. Just make LSU one-dimensional, and then you know what's coming and can kind of game plan a little better for that. But, yeah, I mean, the battle between LSU's offensive tackles and South Carolina's edge guys probably might decide the game. And that's going to be fun because, I mean, like you're saying, it's like someone has to get the best of someone. And, let's see who wins. Mano a mano, let's go. And so that's what I'm really excited for. It'll be it's going to be fun to watch. Just kind of I'm just going to, see who lines up against that left tackle and just watch that battle all day long because that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, really both tackles. I mean, a lot of times Dylan Stewart, he's been on the quarterback's right side. So yeah. Kyle Kennard may draw that Will Campbell assignment. I thought it was good to see Brian Thomas Jr. get in there. I thought he was disruptive. He beat his man, and they basically horse-collared him on one of those plays that ended up going back even further to goal line on the series the punter had to punt with his heels against the end line. So I see the dogs weighing in. I think your dog likes Brian Thomas.
He's excited about Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah. I thought, though, really, Kentucky had the one drive. They ran it 18 straight times, but they had a 12-play drive. They ran it every time. For most of that series, Kentucky was in 2 tight ends and Carolina was in the 3-3-5. They got out of that. I'm here. I've criticized and questioned Clayton White plenty. I'm here to give him his flowers. Through 2 games, his unit has been dominant. And look, I can tell you firsthand, players, great players, and enough of them they make you look really good as a coach. But when you don't have players, I mean, it's like the old adage, a jockey, the best jockey in the world is not winning the Kentucky Derby if he's riding a mule, okay? The SEC, you got to have the thoroughbreds. As my man who used to work at Notre Dame used to say on ESPN, in the SEC, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. And clearly, Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, Desmond Umeozulu, Brian Thomas Jr., Gilbert Edmond, all of those guys have been disrupted, but TJ Sanders, DeAndre Jules, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, Monkel Goodwine, all of those guys, as well as the linebackers. I mean, we saw Fred J.R. Johnson out there. Bangali Kamara played more. Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams. I mean, right now you're at least 5 deep at linebacker. You're 4 or 5 deep at defensive tackle, and basically 6 deep on the edge. I mean, it looks like, and look, I'm going to talk about O'Donnell Fortune because I thought
he was really good. He
played really good. I mean, look, Brock Vandegrift made a pro throw in a perfect spot to Dane Key, who made a great catch, but O'Donnell Fortune was right there. He has been excellent. We saw
the next play after he gets beat, he picks up a screen pass and dropped him for a loss of like 3 yards. And Shane Beamer, after a timeout, goes over to O'Donnell Fortune, seeks him out, and gives him a high five. Like, what a response. Like, great job. And that's what you want to see. Hey, you get beat on a hell of a throw, like, tip your cap, and then let's go play the next down. And O'Donnell Fortune did that perfectly. I was really impressed with that sequence.
Yeah, and on the other side, Judge Collier and Bakari Swain, I thought were excellent. Swain, they used him like they used to use Stephon Gilmore when Ellis Johnson was running the 4-2-5. They'd bring him off that weak side on the corner blitz. He caused an intentional grounding. He forced Brock Vandegrift off his spot on another blitz. Very solid in coverage. Nick Eamon-Wari led the team in tackles. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. The secondary looked much improved over week 1 as far as tackling, coverage, and coming up and having lost yardage plays. I think you muted yourself. Unmute.
Sorry. I think after the Old Dominion game, I mean, we both thought, hey, the defense looked really good, but man, a lot of the problems from last year kept coming up. Old Dominion was over 50% on third down. Like South Carolina, after week 1, was one of the worst third down defenses in the country. Okay, well, that gets fixed a little bit when you start getting your opponent in 3rd and 12 and 3rd and 19 and 3rd and 8. All of a sudden, a little easier to stop people on third down. So that was huge. And then the big plays. I mean, Old Dominion hits that, 70-something yard pass. Then their quarterback on 3rd and forever scrambles for a 36-yard touchdown. And, I mean, you start getting flashbacks to Graham Mertz in the Florida game from a year ago. It's like, holy cow, like, can South Carolina just get off the field? Can they help themselves? And against Old Dominion, I mean, they were putting in the work on 1st and 2nd down, and then life became a little easier on 3rd down. And I was really impressed by the defensive tackles for getting after Brock Vandegrift. I mean, give the flowers to Alex Huntley and TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway. They might only have 1 combined sack, but I mean, they were getting after Brock Vandegrift, and especially on 3rd down, it was fun to see. Like, I think there was one play where Boogie Huntley and Kyle Kennard are just chasing Brock Vandegrift, and he's got to throw it away on third down. It's like that's what you want. That's what you need, and that's winning football. That was something too that you can replicate. That can probably happen again against LSU, and so we'll see how it plays out. But man, that's about all you could hope for against Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Kilgore, he gets another interception. He came up from the nickel spot one time and dropped the guy for a 6-yard loss on a screen play. I thought South Carolina secondary was very disrupted, but we ought to go back to Dylan Stewart. Pro Football Focus, he had the most dominant performance by an edge rusher by a Power 5, now P4 edge rusher since COVID. So in the post-COVID era, no defensive end has put together a performance that ranks as highly as what he's done. And it's like my man Josh Pate said, he's only been here for about 15 minutes because he's a true freshman. But he was obviously held multiple times, no call, right in front of the center judge. But that still didn't stop him from defeating a triple team, getting up off the ground, chasing Vandegrift down and forcing him to throw the ball away. I mean, that's drawn so much attention. I mean, when you see the bend and the acceleration, a true freshman should not have that. I mean, these are advanced techniques, quick hands, ability to get up off the ground, and just how explosive he is. I mean, I think we're seeing the beginning of another all-time great on the edge, -1 on the number. Not wearing number 7, but I know it's 2 games, so I don't want to anoint him too soon. But through 2 games, you can tell this young man is a special talent.
Yeah, it's just disgusting, like how easy he makes things look. I mean, that's what's like incredible to me is he just doesn't make it look hard. Like it's all these things are really, really tough to do. Some of the moves he's doing, getting through a double team, and it doesn't look like there's anything in front of him. Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, I wasn't around when Clowney was doing his thing, but I don't know if I've ever seen an edge guy as a true freshman as dominant as he's been through 2 games. We'll see. He's got to make it through 12 games. He's got to go up against much better offensive linemen, starting with this week. So, I mean, there's plenty of time. Let's not annoy him and start retiring his number. But what a start! He's special. And I mean, now the thing is South Carolina, whatever, all that Garnet Trust money, whatever. I mean, we got to start the Dylan Stewart fund now. And that's the part that sucks about college football, that you're already starting to think about it. But I'm sure the top programs in the country are going to try and get a hold of him, and South Carolina might have to fend off some people this off season. But he's already picked South Carolina once. Seems like he likes it. Loves Sterling Lucas. Seems to love Kyle Kennard. So he could put together quite the career with 3 years in Columbia.
I mean, we got plenty of action in the Nana's Porch chat box. Obviously the weather could be a factor on Saturday. I did not check the forecast this morning because I was putting out some other fires and prepping. Yesterday, it looked like a 66% chance of rain on Saturday, but almost 90% on Friday. So Craig says, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. He's better than Clowney. Technical skill-wise at this point in their career. Tony says freshman, All-American. How will the weather affect? I mean, I think this is a game for South Carolina's offensive line and Rocket Sanders to have a coming out party. LSU's defense still not as talented as they're used to being. Blake Baker comes over from Missouri. He is an excellent coach, and he flat out embarrassed the former offensive coordinator 2 years ago in Columbia. Brian Kelly, also one of the great offensive masterminds, and now they've got 2 films on South Carolina, but with South Carolina's ability to alter the fronts from odd to even and the looks that they can present that all the players that are playing are comfortable with. I mean, like a Bam Martin Scott, he didn't have a ton of plays, but man, one time he shot through a gap and made a lost yardage play on a runner. It was just big time. 4-2-5, 3-3-5. South Carolina can throw both at LSU. They can bring pressure from different spots. It's going to be an interesting chess match. And it's also Garrett Nussmeier's first real road game. And I got to think, with the epicenter of college football descending on Columbia, even with the rain, with College game day, and then right after that at 12:15 or whatever Eastern kickoff, it's going to be bananas. It's going to be nuts inside Williams-Brice Stadium. And I'm interested to see how he can handle it. And how does Lenoris handle all that energy? Because his first home game, the energy hyped him up. Things weren't going well. And when there's a wet ball and wet turf, there's no telling how that football is going to bounce when it gets on the ground.
Yeah. The one thing I'll say about the rain is it probably benefits South Carolina a little more. If it's raining and LSU does have to get one-dimensional and go through the air, I mean, a lot harder to throw a wet ball. So South Carolina at least has a good running back at its disposal. So if that's the way the game has to go, you're thinking South Carolina's, favored a little bit. So we'll see what the weather looks like. I'm sure it's not going to deter too many people from coming out to College game day at 6 a.m. But I'm pretty pumped to just see the environment, the crowd, people tailgating at the crack of dawn. It'll be fun.
So LSU, as you would expect with Blake Baker, Brian Kelly, their best quarter is the third quarter. They've outscored their opponents 28-10, but they've also been outscored 14-3 in the fourth quarter. And their defense had real problems with Southern Cal. And I never even heard of Southern Cal's quarterback.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was outstanding. But I mean, I do worry about the speed of LSU and their wide receiver core with, guys like Kyron Lacey, who's averaging 13.3 yards per catch. He's got 4 touchdowns. Mason Taylor, the tight end, is a big target. Aaron Anderson, 10 for 127 with a long of 41 yards. CJ Daniels, averaging right at 13 yards per reception. And like I said, Nussmeier, 57 of 76, 610 yards, 8 touchdowns, just 1 interception, 75%. And I thought he was really good against Southern Cal. I had not watched their game against Nichols, but But I thought Brian Kelly, they schemed up some good plays to get some, mid-range and short throws to kind of get him going. And then he was extremely accurate throughout the ball game.
Yeah. I didn't watch the Nicholls State game, but like you, I watched the USC game, and I thought he was really good. I mean, their receivers are going to test South Carolina's quarterbacks who could have fell asleep on Saturday, and it wouldn't have been a problem. So they're going to have to be a little more active, a little more in coverage this week. And aside from, a couple plays, I mean, we haven't seen what they're made of yet this season. So this is going to be their first true test. I'm not sure the book completely is out on Garrett Nussmeier yet. I don't know if we've seen enough to say one way or another, this is who he is. Let's label him. So you're kind of going in facing an unknown this week, and we'll see how South Carolina responds. But, like you said, Brian Kelly is a hell of an offensive mind. And, I mean, they are going to scheme things open. They're going to find ways to let this offense kind of cook a little bit. So don't think that South Carolina is going to go in and pitch a shutout or, keep LSU out of the end zone this time. It might end up being, hey, South Carolina's got to score some points on offense, and Lenora Sellers is going to have to, come alive a little bit to win this game.
No doubt. So yesterday afternoon, after Shane Beamer had his press conference, he wasn't in any hurry to announce South Carolina did place tight end Maurice Brown II on scholarship. They released it on their social media account. Thoughts on that and other key takeaways from Shane Beamer's press conference on yesterday? I will say he kind of scolded the media to start his post-game press conference on Saturday in Lexington. What was that like in the room? What was the visceral reaction?
I mean, he was doing it pretty jokingly, but I don't know. I was like, it's like you guys brought this on yourself with that performance against Old Dominion. Like, what? It's not like you just went out and whooped Old Dominion and people were saying, well, this team actually sucks. It's like, no, you guys, they played really poorly against Old Dominion, and it was only fair that, there was some criticism associated with that. So if that's what South Carolina and Shane need to, get some motivation, fine. That's if they want to use that, that's good. But I don't think anything was too out of line. I understand that he's saying, hey, our offensive line actually wasn't bad. If you look at it, it's like, all right, fine. But, the quarterback still got sacked 4 times and things get lumped together. And I don't know if that's exactly the thing I want to nitpick. But, hey, seemed to motivate him. So you're welcome.
So, I mean, I will say this. I mean, I don't think you can – I don't know how you – on the margins, how you can balance on the ledger. Well, our offensive line really didn't play bad. It was the perimeter blocking, but yet 100% of Rocket Sanders' yardage, which was mostly on inside runs, were yards after contact. Okay, I don't know how Pro Football Focus grades guys. I thought the pass protection was good. I thought Sellers probably held it a little bit too long. There were some issues with the tight end in the back on a blitz pickup. What did you think about the 4th and 1 when South Carolina, they decided to go for it, and they did this several times. They motioned a tight end into one of the A gaps to help in the run game, but this time they put Brady Hunt, or I'm sorry, is it Brady Cook or Brady Hunt? Brady Hunt. Brady Cook, I think, is the quarterback at Missouri. They put him under center. He is a former high school quarterback, and he barks off some signals, and they drew Kentucky offsides. I thought that was another huge play, but very, resourceful to get them to jump, because I think if they get a delay of game penalty on that, they're probably punting it.
I don't think there was any chance they were snapping the ball. That was Dowell Loggins in his bag saying, what window dressing can we put on this play? And Kentucky, I mean, that was the theme of their day, is just like, what are you doing? Like, they're not snapping this ball. Like, don't jump. And sure enough, Kentucky jumped. So I thought it was, resourceful is a good word. It was creative. It was really interesting to see them trying to do all this bizarre stuff to make it look so intricate. And yet it was like, Brady Hunt was probably not taking that snap. Like, come on. So I was shocked that Kentucky was that, undisciplined to snap or to jump on that play. But credit to South Carolina for, tempting them, putting the cheese right in front of them and saying, come grab it.
All right, so Lenora Sellers went out towards the end of the first quarter. Kentucky has 4th and 1 at their own 31. They go for it and don't get it. Sellers is jogged off the field to the locker room. Robbie Ashford came in. What were your impressions of how he handled the moment?
I thought he was fine. South Carolina clearly was not asking him to run the Lenora Sellers offense, which I was a little surprised by. But, Robbie Ashford's a really good runner. I mean, he showed that at Auburn. Go look up his Auburn highlight tape. Like, the kid can run. And he had a couple really nice runs against Kentucky. And I thought it kind of opened up something that South Carolina might be able to use later in the season, of bringing in Ashford for a play here or a play there. And maybe even just having him hand off to Rocket Sanders. But when he gets in the game, now the book's out on him. Hey, this kid can run. Why not put Robbie Ashford in a game later in the season and have him just hand the ball off to Rocket Sanders? Because there's going to be a lot of people with their eyes on Ashford. So I anticipate that we'll see him later in the season in some capacity, maybe not a ton. But no, I thought, for given the scenario of jumping in middle of the game, you don't know you're going in, I thought he handled himself well and played decent. You would like to see him, convert a couple of those third downs, but, nothing too crazy. I mean, he did get South Carolina a field goal after some nice starting field position.
So I can see this happening later in the season. This happened in the 2013 Carolina-Clemson game. Carolina put Pharaoh Cooper in the game as a Wildcat quarterback. They snapped it to him, and he took one step back and then started to run like he was going to just run the quarterback sweep. The defense all comes up, and he just stops and tosses a little pass over the defense to Brandon Wilds for a touchdown. I mean, you can kind of see them building something off of that with him. If he's primarily going to be a runner at some point, they're going to have to do something a little different. So, yeah, it was incredible. Look, I know you got to get going. You got a early week prediction for us on South Carolina at LSU. South Carolina 6.5 point underdog. And not only is College Game Day going to be there, but Mr. SEC football, Pate State University, my guy, Josh Pate, another domer, by the way. God only made a few perfect heads. He covered the rest with hair. He's going to be in attendance. And, I mean, again, it's a huge game. I mean, what do we really know? Because I know for certain on this, I'm never picking the over on NFL guys on week 1 again, because it's kind of like against Old Dominion. Unless you play a Southern Cal like LSU did, or, well, I don't think we can really draw much about Clemson, because they just got, like I said, they got pounded by Georgia. I predicted that. But unless you really play a quality opponent, I really think season openers are irrelevant, as we clearly saw with South Carolina on Saturday. But just your thoughts on this game at noon, 12:15 on ABC with College Game Day. I'm hearing. Go ahead.
You're hearing what?
I'm hearing Dawn Staley's going to be the celebrity guest picker.
I didn't see any other person who it could be. I mean, I started going down the list, and I'm like, meh. And it's like Dawn was the one where if you do the pros and cons list, there's no cons. So it's like, yeah, it was probably a really easy choice. Hey, College Game Day can save on its budget, too, if they go that way. They don't have to pay for a private plane to go get her. So that would be pretty cool. I mean, it's going to be rocking. I will say the one thing is, like, you worry that South Carolina is going to eat the rat poison a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team who have never experienced this type of hype, this type of excitement, these type of expectations. That's the worry for me. Is this all too much? I mean, let's look at the last 2 weeks. Both teams that hosted College Game Day lost. It's not always the easiest thing to deal with. So we'll see what how they come out. I think it's going to be a close game. Right now, I'm kind of leaning like LSU by a field goal. But maybe the week will change my opinion.
All right, great stuff. I know you got to get ready to get going to the coordinator's press conference. I have a feeling Clayton White may actually be a little bit more relaxed this week. And, his Dowell goes first, and then he comes in. I don't think he ever goes over 8 or 9 minutes. I'm predicting the over today on 10 minutes for Clayton White's press conference.
We'll see. I'll ask him some questions, get him over.
All right, great stuff. Well, as always, Jordan, be well, and
Thanks,
you do
Keith.
a great job, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road. Appreciate you always being so gracious with your time.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. That is Jordan Kaye from the state. So Blind Squirrel Sports says, after boat racing Kentucky on Saturday, is there any advice y'all would give Kirby Smart before his Georgia Bulldogs battle the Cats in Lexington? Well, I have a feeling Georgia is going to beat down Kentucky worse than South Carolina did, because their offense is certainly more potent and their defense is exceptional. So, the one thing I did want to get into with Jordan we didn't get into was Netflix followed this Kentucky team all week leading up to the South Carolina game. I think Matt Jones from Kentucky Radio, he does a weekend show on ESPN. There was a video of him with a group of Kentucky boosters, and he was talking about how Kentucky gets to 9 wins, and that with their schedule should be good enough to make the college football playoff. And, I can only imagine what their players were saying. They were 8.5, 10-point favorites in that game. But now South Carolina's kind of righted the pecking order a little bit in the SEC. And like Jordan said off the top, a historic win for South Carolina in that was the first game played in the new 16-team divisionless Southeastern Conference, and the Gamecocks sit atop the conference standings at 1-0. And if South Carolina is able to beat LSU on Saturday, you still got to play Akron. Joe Moorhead, he is a ball coach. I like him a lot. But Akron's 0-2 right now. South Carolina could end the month of September 4-0 as the Gamecocks get ready for Cocktober. I know everybody is thinking about that. What are you thinking about, the Gamecocks going into this game? It is Cocktober. Josh Pate talks about that. Obviously, South Carolina has a difficult schedule still ahead. But if you get through September at 4-0, you've got 2 weeks to prepare for Ole Miss. Granted, that will be a monumental challenge. But there are some games like Texas A&M at home, like at Oklahoma, like at Clemson. And again, I'm not, Lou Holtz always says you never have the same team 2 weeks in a row. But what we have seen from South Carolina is 2 weeks in a row is the ability to be dominant on defense. They will be tested this Saturday. But for the Gamecocks, everything's out there. Kentucky thought, well, Kentucky beats South Carolina. They're going to be hosting College Game Day. Well, South Carolina, 31-6 winners over the Cats, and they host College Game Day for the first time since 2014, I believe. And it'll be the first time College Game Day will be at Gamecock Park. That should be a magnificent scene. Hopefully the rain gets out of there. I don't know if it is or not. So we will have to see. All right, so there were some news and note items I wanted to get to. So yesterday, obviously, Nick Eamon-Warry and Kai Kroger were named the SEC Players of the Week. Eamon-Warry for defense, 7 tackles, the pick 6. He led a dominant effort, South Carolina holding Kentucky to just 183 yards of total offense on 63 plays. That was 2.9 yards per play. And Kai Kroger, he was incredible. He had a 50-yard punt, a 54-yard punt, a 57-yard punt, and a season-long 58-yard punt. He flipped the field every single time, pinned Kentucky inside the 10 to start one drive, inside the 20 to start another drive, but mostly flipped the field. And you can't say enough good things about South Carolina's kickoff team. Nicholas Harbor and other guys, number 45 for the Gamecocks. He had several special teams tackles. I think his last name might be, it's Colin Bryant. He was outstanding. South Carolina, other than when they had to kick off from the 25 after the Nicholas Harbor unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, I don't think Kentucky made it past the 25 on any other kickoff return. And multiple times they started from inside their own 20-yard line because of the wind and other factors. So I'm looking at my weather app for the daily. Not looking good. High of 78. It looks like the storm slowed down. Friday now it's only 42% chance of rain, but on Saturday it's increased to 78%. But hopefully maybe it'll stay in Lexington County and downtown Columbia and south of Columbia and not affect Williams-Brice Stadium. I've been there where it didn't rain anywhere except over Williams-Brice Stadium. So we'll see. As I said, Maurice Brown II placed on scholarship yesterday by Shane Beamer. Next week, South Carolina and Akron set for a 7:30 kickoff on ESPNU. I wish maybe it was this weekend instead. Yesterday, South Carolina's women's basketball was honored at the White House. It was a beautiful ceremony, well attended. Lindsey Graham was there. James Clyburn, Mayor Steve Benjamin, who works in the current administration, was there. And the president had a lot of great things to say about Dawn Staley being a Philly girl. He said, you don't mess around with a Philly girl. He's like, they're tough. I know, I married one. And, new South Carolina, only the 10th team in history and only the 5th program in history to go undefeated and win a national championship. UConn's done it 5 times. But South Carolina also the only team in history to go to the Final Four, be undefeated going into the Final Four, lose all 5 starters, and then go back to the Final Four undefeated and win a national championship. 38-0. 3 players off that team were not at the ceremony. Camila Cardoso, who was the most outstanding player of the Final Four, even though the Chicago Sky had an open date, they're in the midst of a playoff battle trying to get one of those final playoff spots. And with Angel Reese, who was having an exceptional season for them, being out, she had to stay and attend practice. Sanaya Fagan is with Team USA in 22 and under 3-on-3 competition in Mongolia, of all places. And then Ashlyn Watkins still serving a team suspension. She was not there, but all of South Carolina's newcomers were there. Joyce Edwards, the number 1 player in the country, the winner of the Gatorade Circle of Champions National Player of the Year, perhaps the top point guard in the class of 2024, Madison McDaniel, and 6'4" transfer from Arkansas, Miriam Dowda, and 6-foot center Adele Tack, who appears to be at 100%. They were there, and it was great to see Dawn Staley. I thought she had an exceptional speech about the state of South Carolina and about everybody coming together and being inclusive. It's a huge recruiting weekend for South Carolina. There will be at least 3 2025 prospects on hand. 4-star wide receiver, maybe flex tight end, Mikael Skinner from Greer Riverside, 6'4", 220. He's been committed to Cincinnati, but he visited Kentucky. I believe it was officially over the weekend. He was at South Carolina for the Old Dominion game. He had to be impressed with what Michael Smith and Joshua Simon did in Dow Loggins' offense and what he saw from Lenora Sellers, who was 11 for 15, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception in that game. He will be back. South Carolina going for the flip here. I'm putting in a crystal ball pick for the Gamecocks. 4-star Georgia Tech offensive tackle. I'm not even going to attempt to really pronounce his name. He's got an African name. He will be on hand. Maybe I can find it. And then there is, here we go. I'll get that name for you. Give me just a second. I'll pull it up. The Gamecocks will also host a ton of 2026 and 2027 prospects that some of them are top 30, top 50, top 100, top 150 guys, a lot of 4-star guys. A lot of the commitments will be in probably your top 2 future quarterback targets, Michael Clayton for 2026 and Mason Holtzclaw, who's a South Carolina native, for 2027 will be in attendance. Demola Ajadon, 6'6", 285 from Duluth, Georgia. He's a 4-star athletic tackle from Duluth, Georgia. He's been committed to Georgia Tech, but he's coming to the game, as is 4-star running back Usman Croma from Lee County High School in Leesburg, Georgia, 6 foot 1/2 inch, 215 pounds. If that name sounds familiar from his high school, it's because Jaron Willis and Juju McDowell both attended Lee County High School. Croma was the player of the year in his region as a junior. Unbelievable statistics for him. In fact, his high school coach says he's the best he's ever seen. He had 1,783 rushing yards, 20 touchdowns, and then had 31 receptions for 522 yards with 9 more touchdowns. And he's been a heavy favorite to attend Auburn, but Auburn laid an egg on Saturday against Cal. So I know we may be having some internet issues here, but before we sign off, I do want to mention, and we'll go off with the black screen in a moment of silence. 23 years ago, on September the 11th, 2001, terrorists carried out a coordinated terror attack. 4 planes were hijacked by 19 terrorists. The first 2 planes crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. The third plane struck the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense, and the 4th plane was headed for another target, but thanks to the brave people on that plane, they attacked the terrorists and sacrificed their lives during the passenger revolt to keep that plane from harming any other Americans. All totaled, 2,977 people were killed, making it the deadliest terror attack in U.S. history. And what was so great was after 9/11, there was no Democrats or Republicans. It was just Americans. It is one of the most united times I've ever seen in our history. And so we're going to go out with a black screen and a moment of silence to remember the brave souls, the first responders, the innocent lives that were lost, and pray, as the slogan was, never again. And so this has been Gamecock Pod Live for September 11th. I am Keith Allsep. God bless you all, and God bless America today. And let us never forget what happened 23 years ago today. I'll be back tomorrow on Gamecock Pod Daily.